So Rod asked you about if you how you have time to fit in your training regimen despite like all the other things that you're doing and how busy you are. So like what are you doing from a training perspective? I guess one, what are you doing from a training perspective? And two, how did you train for the show going into it?
That yeah, so that's a great point. So I mean I've historically I've changed. So I used to do a lot of endurance stuff. So I've done marathons, long bike rides, that kind of stuff. Um, I used to be a semi-professional rugby player when I was just coming out of school. So I was very good at rugby then. I had a car crash, so I actually fractured one of the vertebrae in my spine. So
Wow.
I had to stop. I couldn't play anymore. And then I transitioned into kind of doing endurance stuff. And then just before I started doing the challenge again in the 2, 3 months in the lead up to it, um, I started kind of put some size on. I've done some boxing in the past, which I absolutely loved. That was like the next from rugby, it went to boxing. That was like the next sport which I really got my teeth into. And now it's kind of like general preparedness for life training. I like to do a bit of everything.
Yeah.
I want to be able to do anything. And I felt like in terms of training for the challenge, bearing in mind, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, before I did the UK challenge, I hadn't really watched much of the show itself.
Okay.
I'm now
Mhm.
a massive fan of it. From being on it and seeing how amazing it is, but you can't really train for it. Like I didn't have a clue what would be coming my way. And in hindsight, I think they should do the next CrossFit. I feel should be like challenge training, where you have to do mental training with physical training. I think that as a combination is so interesting. Um, but I didn't know what to do in the lead up to it. I kind of just I was running a lot. I knew there'd be a lot of running, but the other stuff like you can't train until you get there. Really, you've got no idea. So just general preparedness for everything was what I was going for.
Did
Yeah,
you
it's funny. Oh, go
go
ahead,
ahead?
Evan.
Well, I was gonna ask
I was
if
just gonna.
I was gonna ask if you did any like puzzles, math, or memory, because it seems like at this point in time
Yeah,
in the show, it's running and puzzles, math, and memory. Like if you can be good at those two things, you're gonna go really far in the show. Um,
Yeah,
I guess after going through a couple seasons now, is there anything that you would train differently or anything that you would kind of like prepare for going into another season now that you've
I think
experienced a couple?
I think so. I love puzzles and that kind of stuff anyway. So I think what I love about the challenge is it's the perfect all rounders game. Like if you excel in one, when we had in the Challenge UK, we had some amazing athletes on there, and also the World Championships, some amazing athletes. But I felt like they didn't really have, they kind of expected their athleticism to carry them through the competition, and I think they kind of stumbled on some of the more puzzle orientated challenges. Um, so that is something that I felt, I feel like I'm a good all rounder. I'm good at everything, average at everything. Put it that way. But one thing I would definitely brush up on is the politics game for me. I think that's really where I initially in the first one lacked. I kind of went in a bit naive. Um, Maybe I'm to be honest, I'm a bit of an introvert as a person. I don't like to kind of make a big song and dance about my athleticism or what I'm good at. And I felt like on the UK one particularly, I should have learned quicker to kind of create those alliances and to be more switched on when it came to politics. That's definitely something I've seen into the World Championship. But going into the if I was to do another series again, which I'd absolutely love to do, that would definitely be something I'd focus on. Is getting my head around that.
yeah, it's funny. They've had a lot of these challenge workout videos to show us put out, and it's always like people lifting weights, a lot of push-ups, a lot of bicep curls. I'm like, maybe what these people should be doing is having their phone out on an app, just doing puzzles for half this, and then doing the workout because that's really what the show is about.
Literally, yeah. That's what I mean. It'd be a great gym routine if someone made that. I'd definitely do it. Do 100
Uh,
push-ups, a Sudoku, and then a 10-mile run. Great.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
It's funny because that's why workout has kind of turned into accidentally. I have this app Elevate on my phone now, which is just like a bunch of different puzzles and math memory apps. So what I do now is
I've
I
got the same
do a
one.
set of a
Yeah.
workout, and then I do the thing on the app, and then I go back into the workout again. So I've kind of just accidentally fell into that. It's funny you mentioned the politics though, because I mean, on your UK show, you didn't go into elimination at all that season, and you didn't actually win a mission up until winning the final.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, it seemed like you felt like you had a pretty good standing in the house. Did you not feel that way while you were there?
I think in terms of I didn't go out of my way to try and secure my position there. I think if I'm being
Okay.
perfectly honest with you, I think I was lucky in the first one in the sense that there was an algorithm and the partners changed, and I think I was kind of friendly with everybody. Obviously, I had a couple of conflicts in there, and people wound me up a little bit, as is always going to happen when you're in that environment with people for so long. Um, but it's definitely something that I wanted to work on more going to the World Championships. I felt like I wasn't really in the driving seat. I was more reacting to what was going on around me,
Hmm.
and just trying to kind of figure out where I stood. My game plan was to be honest, to play a kind of transparent and honest game from the beginning and just do well in the challenges. And I felt like I only really managed to kind of get into my flow on the final, and then smoked everyone, obviously. So, but like, it's definitely something that in hindsight, to be a more all-rounded challenger, I think would be an area I'd want to improve on.
How would you try to practice that though? That feels like between obviously puzzles and strength training or endurance, that's very easy to accomplish. But practicing politics would seem quite difficult for me.
I think you probably wouldn't practice it. You'd make more of a conscious effort to, have the conversations that need to be had, probably approach people in a more forthcoming way, because as much as it's kind of like we're there for a long time, it happens quickly. We get back from a challenge, we've got an hour, and then we're doing nominations. And I think that hour is like key, that you have everything sorted up until that point.
Oh, wow.
And I think Kellyanne and I, at about episode 3 or 4, I think it started to change a little bit. I had a real rough time at the beginning of the World Champ. Like it was an uphill battle from day one. But I feel like I started to get my head around it. And, the move with Bananas and Justine, like that was something that we've been planning for a while. I don't think the cameras picked on it necessarily as much as I thought they would. But that was something I was like, listen, something's got to change now, because I'm not going to be put in that elimination arena 4 weeks in a row. I hit the wall with that. I said, no, we can't do this anymore.
It's funny. It's only an hour in between the mission and the nominations, really. So you guys really do have to move quickly then to get things going in that time.
Yeah, we get back. We get off the bus. Obviously there's from finishing the challenge. When you finish the challenge, that's really the only time you know where you stand. Like there's a winner, there's a loser, and the people in the middle, which is really interesting in the World Championship, is the people who didn't win or lose who had the power, and that's where we fell foul in certain situations. In the last episode, it's apparent because Kellyanne and I won, but we didn't have the voting powers. So kind of, and there's a few other times where one of us won, one of us lost, and we didn't have the numbers in the middle. So that was a really interesting dynamic to put in there. So you need to have people who are going to have your back when you're not there to encourage them to, almost.
Yeah.
Was there ever any conversation about not winning the mission, right? So you could kind of like maintain those numbers in the middle, right? Because essentially the only thing that you really don't want to do is lose, right? You don't want to lose and be guaranteed to go into elimination, but winning really doesn't get you that much power this season. Really, it kind of, especially when you get later into the game, when there's fewer and fewer votes for the nomination.
100%. So that was actually, I think it was something that Kellyanne and I didn't actually have the opportunity to get excited about, because for us, it was like, if we don't lose, there's a high chance we're going to get voted, because everyone's voting the same way at the moment. People are really lacking any sort of kind of panache and looking for like gameplay early on. So we were like, if we don't win, there's a high chance we're going in. So our main objective was to win. I think some of the other bigger teams who had their numbers intact, like the US and Australia, that was definitely something that they were leaning into. To be honest, we're all super competitive and everybody wants to win. So as much as maybe they wouldn't have minded, finishing in the middle because they had the numbers to back them up, I think everybody always wants to win, but they almost had an insurance policy knowing that they had numbers surrounding them throughout the competition, so that if they did come in the middle, they'd probably still be able to direct the narrative.
With those Australian and US teams, a pretty dominant narrative earlier in the season were Danny and Sarah making the waves with Emily and Grant to like create that alliance between those two teams. And a couple people on the US team on the Legends side have said they were not aware that was going on. Did you guys not realize that the US and the Australian teams were working together?
I think as soon as I realized that, I probably said about 6 words to Sarah in the whole competition. So you got to think of it like, which I'm not upset about. If you're not having the conversation that's probably been had about you, that was kind of my thought process. So in the back of my head, I was like, I know what's going on here. And I think, they kind of alluded to it in episode 1, where Kiki got stitched up by Emily and Sarah. Like that had been planned before. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, all right, something's going on here. These guys, as much as it's Australia and it's USA, there's definitely a bit of a crossover here, and they're kind of working together. And so that became more and more clear as the competition progressed. But if you're not having the conversation with them, it's probably being had about you. So that's kind of like the mindset I had.
So what do you feel like the biggest storyline the editors have not shown through this point in the season, through episode 8, right? That's the last episode that came on. You talked about how Kellyanne and you had been planning the Bananas and Justine move for a while before it actually happened. Do you feel like there are any other big storylines that were going on in the house that just we haven't seen from a viewer's perspective?
What have you seen? I feel like there was so we had this whole joke amongst some of the lads in there. It was Troy, Ben, who else was in there? Ben Hart, obviously, but we kind of labeled ourselves Misfit Islands, where as the nations kind of broke down and numbers were lost in certain places, we banded together. And I feel like maybe that's kind of shown a bit further on, but I think in the last few episodes, that really was the driving force between a lot of the decisions that were made. I know Ben's fallen out with Team USA, but we took him aside and we were like, listen, you got to make a choice now. Do you want to roll with us, or do you want to keep supporting a team that's not necessarily got your best interests at heart? And we came up with this, the Misfit Island kind of catchphrase, and I felt like that was we were in a really strong position there. Like that was a solid situation. And then sadly, obviously, in the latest episode, Ben gets medically disqualified, which was a real hammer blow. Teams get mixed up. And it was all back to the drawing board from there. And that's the thing about the challenge, is like it changes so quickly. You could be set up, like, I'm riding this out now, we'll be in the final, and then next thing you know, it all goes to shit, and you've got to go back to the drawing board.
So you talked about how Ben had to be medically evacuated last episode. We saw that you were in pretty rough shape. We saw that it seemed like beyond rough shape, right? We saw that it seemed like you were pretty close to having to go home. How close were you to being leaving the game at that point in time?
I mean, I was absolutely buggered. I'm not gonna lie to you. I couldn't get out of bed for about 2 days. I couldn't get out of bed. I was so lucky that I wasn't in the nomination for the one before, so I could kind of chill out for a day. But then those 2 days, I was just like, if there's a challenge now, I am screwed. And then the morning of the challenge, when that scene was shot with Kellyanne and I, and she got a bit upset, understandably. My temperature was, I think, 39.8 degrees, or it was centigrade, so I don't know what it is Fahrenheit for you guys. But it was high, so like, you can go to a challenge, or you can go to the doctors. And I was like, I can't let Kellyanne down now. So I was, thank God it was trivia, put it that way, because I think if I got there and it did anything stamina based or endurance or strength, I was like, I'd say like 20% of my capacity at that point, and I'd been really sick and I was getting worse. So luckily that took the pressure off me that it was trivia, and then we won, so I didn't have to worry. Basically, it was just kind of take it day by day and buy yourself an hour each time. But if it had gone the other way, I don't know if I would have been able to do it. Like, I was really, really sick.
How much longer after that did it take for you to become fully recovered again? Like, were you ever really the same throughout the rest of the time on the show? Or
I don't think I was ever, to be honest, going into that competition, I felt like because there was only 2 weeks between the UK one, and between us going out, so I felt I was on the back foot physically, and then after that I felt that I never really you don't really get the chance to recover, because filming days are long, you're on your feet all day, you're doing whatever you're doing, and I never really felt like amazing after that, but we managed to put it together, luckily.
So
yeah,
go ahead, Rob.
So with Ben, I mean, we didn't really get much of a narrative about him being sick before that episode, and he seemed to be in very rough shape as well. So was there just a sickness going on in the house that kind of everybody had at a certain time? Because like Bananas has talked about being sick. Your fellow countryman Nathan obviously got DQ'd for a sickness. So it's just kind of everybody sick at a certain point.
Yeah, I think Bananas definitely had it coming into the competition, and I don't know what it was, but it seems to get worse. It was Amber, obviously, is the transpired, was pregnant. So that was what she had morning sickness, I think. But me, Troy, and Ben were all in that same room that Nathan was medically disqualified from. So he left, and then Troy took his bed, and we were quite sick. But we definitely, I think, Ben obviously had the worst situation. Like, he was really bad. We were really.
I mean, he was barely talking, right?
Oh yeah, but for quite a few days before that as well, it was changing his. He had to change his sheets twice in the night because he sweated through them. Like, he was really sick. We were really, really worried about him. And I think turned out he had pneumonia on the lung or something like that. It was really bad.
Wow.
Okay. So he was sick, but it was him and I really who were battling it the most, I think. And then obviously as soon as we started getting sick, everyone we kind of kept ourselves away as much as possible from people.
So what is Troy doing then? So because we see the one scene where it's you're in one bed and Ben's in the other bed, and Troy goes and lays on right in between after half the house is gone. He can't go take somebody else's bed and not be in that room anymore.
Yeah, I'm not. I thought by that point he was like, I'm in now. Might as well ride this one out with the boys. I'm not sure what is, but he managed to bounce back quite quickly. But he was definitely sick for a little while. There was 2 days where we were both in bed together. Yeah, but not in bed together. That sounds strange. But side by side, sick in bed. But he's obviously got that strong Aussie blood, carried him through, bounced back.
So
old boy Troy is.
We saw that Amber B decides to give up her spot in the game for Casey at the mission in episode 8. Was that a surprise to everyone at the mission, or was there some indication that was going to happen coming into the mission for episode 8? And I guess 2, had the producers already planned out that they would kind of make Casey and Troy a partnership, or was that something they had to decide at the mission?
So actually Amber told myself and Kellyanne before we went to the challenge that she was going to drop out, and she said that in the sense of, I don't know what's going to happen to Troy, but I just want you to know that this is because we had a strong partnership at that point. We were working together. She's like, this is what's going to happen. I was like, okay, shit, like let's go to the drawing board here. But she wanted to. I think she was waiting to see if Ben was going to be brought in because we had no idea. We hadn't seen him for a couple of days, and I think if he had entered back into the game at that point, she wouldn't have pulled out. But I think she saw an opportunity that maybe because one partner from both teams had to be taken out, that they'd be able to do something about it. But so I think she waited, and then production, decided that that was the right thing for them to continue because both their partners. It's not that they wanted to leave; they had to. And I think they made that decision on the spot there, to be honest. And yeah, I think it obviously worked out for Casey and Troy, but didn't work out for our alliance in terms of like numbers and stuff. So it wasn't a positive thing for us.
Who were you? You already talked about how you were really close with Troy. Who were some of the other people that you were close with in the house?
I'd say Kiki was probably my best mate in the house. Absolute babe. Like really, I think she was the most underrated player there in my eyes. I think she's kind of coming into her own now, but you judge a book by its cover. Obviously, she's incredibly intelligent and physically capable, and like was smashed and obviously won the Australia challenge. But I think she was really underrated from the get go. But she was just a great energy to have in the house as well. Like she took the kind of mother role and like make everyone breakfast and just light up the house, which I think when you're spending that much time in an environment like that, it's good to have people like that. And then Troy, Nathan obviously was one of my best mates, but he got medically disqualified at one. And then Ben, I was close to, and Ben Hart.
Yeah, no.
And out of the old boys, Jordan was like the guy I'd spend most of my time with.
Okay. Yeah, Kiki, we talked with her a few weeks ago and she definitely kind of impressed us, kind of like giving like her perspective behind the scenes of like what she was thinking about how she kind of like plays up like the ditzy role and being oblivious. And then I don't remember who told us about it, but someone was telling us about some like poker tournament that you guys had that
she
ended up winning.
Everyone to give us money.
Yeah.
Took my money. I thought I was in the I obviously did the same thing because Wes was leading the poker and he's what Wes is like, he's self-proclaimed genius, which to be fair, he's quite a smart bloke. But Kiki swans in, buys in, takes everyone's money. I think she ended up winning a couple of $100s in the end.
Was it with actual money?
Yeah, we were actually playing with money, yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. You got to keep yourself entertained. But we were only, I think it was like twice or three times the poker set was left in the house. So obviously it wasn't like a regular thing, but it was nice to have like a night where you can kind of almost switch off a little bit from the game and get to know people. Try to switch off from the game. But yeah, Kiki was, she's a smart cookie. She knows exactly what she's doing. And people have underestimated in the past and it's bitten them in the arse and it will continue to do so in this game.
Yeah. So what was your casting story like? How did you get involved with the challenge? You were on Challenge UK, you were on this season. Like you said that you weren't very familiar with the show coming into it. So what was that transition like?
Yeah, so obviously, the Challenge UK was the first ever challenge. There's been cast members who have come from the UK before, and Nathan was close with Rogan and those kind of guys and Theo, but I wasn't massively aware of the show. I'd seen bits and bobs, but I had an email go to my agency, to my management, asking me if I'd like to do an interview for a role in the first ever Challenge UK, and I was like, this sounds exactly like a TV show I want to do. It is reality TV. I do reality TV already, but it's far more than that. It's an opportunity for me, it was an opportunity to push myself like out of my comfort zone, and it was exactly what I needed at the time, and it was the perfect thing to do. And yeah, I did the casting, and then got the gig, went out to Buenos Aires, which was amazing. It was a really great thing to happen. Like I'm very grateful for the opportunity to take part in it. It's an amazing show. I've filmed quite a few TV shows before, but and in the UK particularly, I'm not sure what it's like in the US, but in the UK, I feel like, and it frustrates me because my background is, adventure, outdoors, kind of military background. And I feel like in the UK, when you're on TV, they really wrap you in cotton wool, try and protect you from the world and, health and safety, X, Y, and Z. But this one, they're like, no, you guys crack on, do your thing. Like, just get on with it. I was like, amazing. This is great. I get to do all these awesome challenges and all this amazing physical stuff, and meet great people and push myself and wrestle and do all the rest of it. It was great. It was amazing. Really cool TV show.
Yeah, did you know how short the UK show was going to be before you came on? Because I did really enjoy that season. My only issue with it was just it felt like it was too short. It was only like 5 episodes.
Yeah, it was only 5. So I mean, I think it was like a 3-week filming block all in all.
Okay.
Which I felt was a shame, to be honest, because there was a big difference in my eyes between the UK one and the World Championship in terms of the production behind it as well. And a lot of the production in the UK one were like, you guys got to get ready for the US one because it's going to be very different. And I was like, I kind of almost wanted it to be longer and more rigorous and kind of push us a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, it was tough, but the World Championship was a whole different kettle of fish, and I was very grateful for having that opportunity to go on and do that one because I wanted more from the UK one. I wanted it to be longer. I wanted to be more reps, and I didn't realize how quick everything would happen. You almost don't have time to really lean into those alliances and the relationships and really get your head around the game, because we'd all come into this as complete newbies. No one had done it before, so we were learning very quickly, but didn't really have time to implement that, which is what I would have liked to have changed.
So what were the biggest differences between the Challenge UK and the Challenge World Championship? You said that they were completely different animals. Like what were the biggest?
I think it was just scale. Like the US, the World Championship was just, everything was bigger. The production value behind it, obviously the budget was clearly more as well. Some of the stunts we did on there were amazing. There's a couple, in the next 2 episodes, you'll see some really cool stunts as well. And it just felt like it was a condensed version of the current format, which it worked for the UK audience, and I think obviously it was the first time, so they wanted to test the water and that kind of stuff. But it just, playing against the legends as well was great, because I could then see how the game has been played and how these guys have absolutely crushed it for years, and to go against the best, that's kind of what I was excited about. So you had the wisdom from all these guys who've done it for years. You had increased kind of scale and production value, and then longer, and the challenges are definitely kind of more rigorous and a lot more physical as well.
So did you know?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that, just because the set you guys played on for the UK season, basically all that was just borrowed from Ride or Dies and the Australian season. So did you guys realize you were kind of getting hand-me-down missions to houses from those seasons?
Well, the only time I realized it had been filled there, because they didn't let us know that before. We found someone's water bottle under one of the sofas. One of the Australians called Johnny. I was like, is there another cast member coming in? Are we about to get sabotaged? And then we kind of put it all together, and they were like, yeah, well, we filmed the previous ones here. And obviously, in hindsight, I'd like to have called them up and asked how they took on some of the challenges. But I wasn't made aware of that prior to going out there, that they filmed it in the same location.
So did you know about any of the legends coming in? Did you know who they were? Did you know anything about them?
Obviously, after the UK one, we went away and did our homework. We're like, okay, this is amazing. This is a great game. Let's do some history lessons here. And obviously, we watched all the Ball Brawl highlights and the pole wrestles, and you want to know what all the possible eliminations are that you're going into, because a massive part of that game, and that's why the legends are so good at it, is they know how to. There's a skill behind it, right? There's you can kind of learn how to best take on the eliminations predominantly, and then what the challenges might be expected. There's always like a hack or an Easter egg that you can kind of get out of it, and those guys definitely had the knowledge to do that. So we did the homework, and then obviously you come across the likes of Bananas and Jordans and Westers and Tories and those kind of guys. And I was really hoping that they'd all be out there, because we wanted to pit ourselves against the best. And as Team UK, we did back ourselves, and we were like, we do feel confident, as guys who have not really done this before, but physically I think we've got it, and we'd love to learn from them and see how well you do. So yeah, it was more like an exciting challenge rather than intimidating to be going against those guys.
Which one of the cast members, I guess, surprised you the most, right? Like after you kind of went home and did your homework, like you said, about learning about the show and seeing the people that would be on the show, was there anyone that was on the show that was different than what you thought they would be like?
I think it's really, obviously, it's hard not to judge a book by its cover. I think so many big names in there. Some of them are amazing, like some of the ladies like Naya and Jodie, super, really nice and accommodating and warm people. Even some of the guys, like Jordan was an absolute legend. I've got to say, I really got on with him. Wes was great, like smart, like interesting guys to have a conversation with. And I think as much as there's this bravado and it's a competition and stuff, at the end of the day, they're all actually really nice people and they're there to compete and they're there to win. But they don't do it in a way that's kind of aggressive or kind of belittle you. And I think to be honest, I think they were surprised by us in the sense that we came there to play a game and we turned up and we got the job done and we didn't just follow, the format that those guys had written, because I think there's an expectation or in the past and other challenges, there's been, the rookies, if you like, are often the first ones to get booted off. But this was a different level because all of the legends were paired with an MVP or a chat or a UK winner or whatever country they came from. So they didn't really have the option of just booting off the rookies first because we were tied to legends. So I think we played the game how we wanted to play it and not what they expected us to. And I think they respected us for that. And a lot of the guys are very complimentary on kind of how we've come into this and kind of get our head around it and worked hard and give them a run for their money. I think pulling off the bananas elimination as well was kind of homage to what the youngsters could do. So that was exciting to be part of.
Yeah, my one thing with the show is I got kind of mad they didn't hype you guys up enough with that. I mean, I would assume you and Kellyanne talked about it, but she has probably been waiting to do that for like 15 years, right?
I think, yeah, there's definitely some redemption in there. I didn't know. And obviously, like partner with Kellyanne, like she's been doing this for years. Like she's a real firecracker. Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong, we had our personality clashes. I think we're very different people, but I was very grateful to be partnered with her, despite the fact that, I was the last loser. I lost the qualifying round, which was an absolute nightmare. But I thought, it has worked out well. And as much as we clashed, and sometimes I felt she could have been a bit more kind of intrinsic with her thoughts and not started so many fires. Like it was great to play the game with her, and I really appreciated every minute with her.
So what happened with?
Hold on, let me ask this.
Sorry.
So how much of a background did she give you about like her history with Johnny and like everything that's like happened with her in the past? Like, did she?
I didn't realize how deep that ran.
Okay.
Yeah. So I still don't really know how deep it runs, to be honest. It was definitely she was definitely very excited to get rid of him and was definitely on board with that.
Have you heard of the island?
What happened on the island?
It's a long story. It's this
we may not be allowed on the air if we talk about it too much.
It's this.
I'm not going to do my homework now.
It's this season that they had. I think it was in like 2007, maybe. So this was like 16 years ago, and this was Kellyanne's first season on the show, and Johnny was on the show, and it was their idea that they kind of wanted to like copy Survivor a little bit, and so they put everyone on the season on this like deserted island, like limited their food, and pretty much everyone wanted to kill each other. And Johnny and Kellyanne were just like at each other's throats for like the entire time, like throughout the entire course of the season. And so I was curious if that came up at all.
Do you know what? It wasn't like the main. I mean, she was definitely like. I could see there was history there, but what I will say is, I think as much as that might have been, a history, I feel like they were both quite respectful in the sense that they wanted to take each other's game, but they weren't going to like drag names to the dirt, or it didn't get personal when the cameras went rolling, that kind of stuff. So they were both like professional, but obviously still wanting to send the other one home. And they both got the kind of personality where they say what they think, and I think that is a superpower in a sense. Like there's no grey area with either those two. Like it's black and white. You get what you give. And I felt like that's probably why they have quite a lot of conflict. But I respect them both for it. To be honest, I'm here for it.
Yeah, when you guys made that move against Bananas and Justine, I saw a couple people online asking why you didn't target Tori and Danny instead. And my theory was that you just felt like Casey would be more willing to vote for Bananas and Justine than she would for Tori. Was that your guys' thinking, or was there more going on there than just that?
Our thinking was, so there was a time where Kellyanne and Tori were kind of like toying with the idea of us kind of working a little bit together. So it wasn't a bridge we wanted to massively burn. I think the only safe option for us was to go for Justin and Bananas, because Team UK, Kaz and Theo obviously had a bit of a connection there, so that vote wouldn't have gone our way. Some of the other guys were keen on protecting Tori and Danny in the hopes that they would work with us later on, and we wouldn't have got the vote from Ben if it had been Tori and Danny at that point. And then it kind of just, we wanted to get two big players in there, and Bananas was the first one, sadly, who had to go, because it all made sense when we were on the ground. Like the numbers worked out. He'd been playing quite a subtle game up until that point as well. He'd been quite to himself a little bit. hadn't really engaged with us in terms of working together. Other people had approached us. We had a bit of kind of flirting around the idea of working together, and he hadn't. So I think his lack of wanting to engage with us was the reason he got put in.
It's funny you mentioned that so many people wanted to work with Tori and Danny because so much of the season has been centered around them just feuding constantly throughout the season. And my theory has been that I actually think that's kind of helped them in a certain way because Tori has all these friends and Danny has all these other friends, and there's only like 2 teams left that are actually willing to vote for them. Did that feel like how it played out in the house, or have they just kind of skated by
Yeah,
accident?
no, it was really frustrating to be honest because I felt like they weren't doing justice to the game, like the stalemating and the just make a decision. And I think it was a classic of wanting your cake and eating it. Like you cannot protect everyone in the game. The rule is kind of you got your 1, your 2, your 3, and that's it really. And that number gets whittled down the further on the game goes. And I didn't really understand Danny's thought process behind it. When you are partnered with someone with Tori who has very strong existing connections in different teams as well, you would lead into that surely, and it didn't make sense to his game to do what he was doing. So it was a really frustrating thing, and those nominations took hours, mate. Like as much as it plays out for like 5 minutes on TV, we were sitting at that table for like an hour and a half at one point. I was like, guys, make a damn decision. Like, you had no problem chucking us in last week, 3 weeks ago. So it was almost like, get on with it. At some point you're gonna have to upset somebody. The game is getting to that stage where you cannot protect everybody. That's part of the game. Make the choice and get on with it.
Yeah, this week seemed really frustrating just because Danny and Tori's vote essentially didn't matter, right? They burned a vote
They burned it themselves.
Yeah, and the person who Danny wanted to go in still went in regardless, right? It just didn't matter. And we've gotten a number of confessionals about how Danny wants to try and like take away Tori's numbers. But at this point in time, it seems like from the viewer's perspective, the only relationship that Danny really has left is Sarah, right? That's his biggest alliance member. Beyond that, like he should want all of Tori's relationships in the house to continue to help them. It's just kind of confusing.
Yeah, it was confusing. And also, you remember, like, Tori has history with these guys. Like, Jordan, obviously, that was to be honest, would I protect my ex-fiance? I'm not sure. But fair play to them. They want to do that. Cool. But like, you'd lean into the sense that she has numbers who are going to protect her and they know the game. And I felt like Danny's connection to Sarah was irrelevant. Like, they've done 1 season of the Challenge US together. They both were on Survivor. I'm not sure if they were on together, but I felt like it was a poor decision from him, and it didn't really make sense to me. I think he was just a little bit kind of he wanted to play it his way, but he wasn't receptive to maybe his way not being the right way, and that obviously caused a lot of frustration with Tori. And I think if they went back in time, I don't think either of them would have chosen each other again. I think that's pretty abundantly clear.
Yeah, it's funny because my thing has been like they were engaged, and like he met these people a week ago. Like there's just such a difference in gravity of relationships there.
Literally.
Do you think that almost just made your game easier? Just that you kind of came with like, I know the people from the Challenge UK, but that's kind of it, and I'll just ride with what Kellyanne wants mostly.
Yeah, I think I had the people I wanted to work with. I think I was very much like, I'm going to stand off, see what's going on where, and I knew at some point, and I always think you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket from day one, because I think you make too many promises in the challenge, you're going to let someone down, right? And then you're going to get pissed off, and then you're going to have a target on your back. So for me, it was like, I know at some point these alliances are all going to start to break down, and there are going to be loose players. And in my mind, it's about reacting. You can't have the same plan on day one as you're going to have on day 20, because you won't have the same people there. The relationship won't be the same, and things have to change. And I think it was a classic example of those guys making too many promises to people they couldn't protect, and that bited them in the ass in the end. So I think it was a better strategy to kind of go in more open-ended and react, rather than go in one-dimensional and feel like you have to protect the same people throughout the whole competition, because the cards are going to fall different every single day. There's so many variables, there's so many different things that happen. And if you're committed to one cause and you can't react, then it's not going to work out for you.
We saw that you kind of had to rein in Kellyanne at certain points in time when she got like a little hot-headed. And so I wouldn't say that we've seen any like major disagreement between the two of you on the show. Were there any big disagreements the two of you had about you wanting to do something different than what Kellyanne wanted to do? Or were you kind of the mindset that you kind of needed to like be the peacemaker in the relationship? You needed to be the level-headed one?
I think that kind of those those roles were established very early on. I think there was there was a scene in like episode 1 or 2 where Tori's in the room and she's suggesting we vote in Team USA. So I was like, and bearing in mind, we're quite similar personalities in the sense that if I'm pissed off, you're going to know about it. And I was like, right, okay, Tristan, this is a time to grow a little bit. You're going to have to take a
Yeah.
different role to what you normally do now. That's cool. That's fine. So I kind of had to try and balance out her over honesty sometimes, and just be like, and it's frustrating because week on week, we were getting voted in, we were getting targeted. It was the easy option. I was just like, can we just chill out a little bit here now? I know you're frustrated, and I know you're having a tough time, in particular with the Jeannet and Grant stuff. I was like, it's emotional thinking versus rational thinking. I was like, let's compartmentalize that emotion and store that for later on. But there's a game to be played here, and I feel like sometimes you don't want to show all your cards early on, because if you make it abundantly clear that you're pissed off with people and you're vocalizing it, it's an easy option to vote us in again. And I think that was the reason we kept getting stuck in week on week. So I did have to try and like steer her in a slightly different direction. And we did have a few conversations which were very frustrating. Not all of them were caught on camera. But, I just felt like she was pulling me in a direction of, we're getting targeted. I was like, you've got to stop now, because we need to reassess, reevaluate where we are in this game, and try and come up with a better strategy, because this one isn't working and we're just pissing everyone off. So it was a learning curve for me, and I think it was a learning curve for her. And I think she realized later on down the line, the importance of us communicating, and sometimes she would go off and do her own thing, and I'd have to react to it. And I ended up trying to communicate with other people and then bring her into it, rather than letting her just go and do all the work.
Yeah,
It's a tough one, that she's a legend for a reason. So you've got respect. I respect her massively, but I think sometimes the fiery attitude isn't the best one in the house. As much as
these co-ed pairs seasons, because the challenges have done a bunch of different formats over the years, but these seasons have always been my favorite, just because it feels like, in addition to the competition going on, we've also 90 Day Fiance a bunch of married couples into this thing with how the game ends up looking. Are you kind of constantly thinking about what your partner's doing while you're in the house, or are you ever able to just zone out and not worry about it that much?
I was constantly thinking, what's going on here? I was like, what's going on here? Because one conversation can change everything, and I felt like we definitely got better at it, and we learned to communicate more. And there was a bit of a lull where we weren't communicating very well, and she'd go off and make promises to other people, and I would go off and have conversations with other people, and then we'd come back together, and she'd say, oh, hold on a minute, I've said this to Tori, or I've gone and said this to Troy. So I think having that was one thing I think we grew into as a pair. But at the beginning, it was something we definitely, we weren't on the same page with. And I think some of the other partnerships, Amber and Troy, constantly on the same page. Those kind of guys, Kaz and Jordan, always on the same page. Kiki and Darrell. That strength in kind of, you're both on the same page and you're both saying exactly the same thing, so people can't question you or start to think that you're full of shit, is really important. And I think that's something that I would have changed with her, and we should have communicated more and worked together as a team. But it's definitely something we get better at. I think the Bananas Justine elimination is where that kind of comes together, and we start working together, and we had trust in each other. It's also really hard to trust someone in a game who you don't really know. You're getting to know them, as there's a lot of money up on the line here. So you want to trust them, but at the same time, you also back yourself. We're all very competitive people, and Kellyanne and I are definitely people who I think stand better on their own. That was a learning curve for me. It was an interesting one.
So, which of the legend women beyond Kellyanne do you think you would want to be paired with if you could do it over again?
I think I would want to be paired with maybe Tori. I think we're quite similar people. I think we'd probably have quite a similar strategy as well. So yeah, maybe Tori or Jodie. Very kind of calm, collected, maternal instincts kicking in hard. Like she knows what she's doing. She backs herself. So yeah, but then all of them, to be fair, like when you've got a house full of such powerful players, any one of them would have been amazing. Casey would have been great to be with. She's awesome.
So who was?
I was happy with Kellyanne in the end.
Yeah. So who, from the perspective of the people in the house, which pair was perceived as, I guess, the biggest threat in the game? Because I think from a viewer's perspective, we kind of have an idea of, we think, oh, this team has a good chance to win. They will be competitive. But from the perspective of the people in the house, kind of did anyone have that target on their back of, oh, we're in trouble if they make it to the end? This is a really good team. Or did everyone have that perception?
I mean, again, such strong players, it's hard to find a weak partnership. But I think, physically, obviously, Tori and Danny, intimidating players to go up against. Danny is like an incredible athlete, and obviously Tori, as a woman, is incredibly strong as well. Um, Casey and Troy, when those guys got put together, we knew they'd be dangerous. Um, who else? Yeah, Jordan and Kaz. Obviously, Jordan, you know, great all round player. Kaz got a combat sports background. So I've seen her do the Challenge UK, so I knew they were a very strong team. But then we also thought Wes and Zara would go all the way as well. So, I think anything could happen, and we were very aware that one challenge could be very different from another person. But the people who would probably be good in the final, I think we all knew who they were in terms of like the guys I wouldn't want to run a final against. Yeah, the Jordans, the Wesses, yeah, Tori and Danny. But everyone's strong again. Like there was no weak link in that house.
Yeah, the one thing with the challenge is just things can change so quickly, right? Like you like West Florida could have been the best team there, and they just have the wrong John a day. West decides not to drink the smoothie, and then that's it. They're done.
The smoothie. He's gonna have nightmares about that smoothie for the rest of his life.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he's still very much regretting that.
Yeah.
Were you guys thinking at any point that the pairs might just be broken up or even go individual? Because we have seen pair seasons in the past. Like I don't know if you've watched War of the Worlds 1. That's a very British heavy
No, I
season.
saw that one.
But on that season, the pairs blow up about 2/3 the way through, and everybody's just individual. Do you think that might happen?
Yeah, to be honest, we thought, I think the one thing going in there is that expect the unexpected.
Mhm.
So that was obviously always in the back of people's heads that anything could happen at any time. That's definitely, you're constantly living in that world of uncertainty where you think you've got it all sussed out, then anything could happen at any point. So yeah, that was something we thought. There's a lot of speculation around that. But you just got to take it each day by day. In the Challenge UK, obviously we had the algorithm and the partners have swapped each time. So we went in with the expectation that perhaps we would change partners. And then up until this point, nothing has happened. So, you never know.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been interesting to see how the seasons develop compared to some of the other seasons they've done in the recent past. So you've talked about it. I mean, we have this question down to ask you, but I think we already know the answer. Would you do the show again? I mean, it seems like you would be excited
100%.
to go back on. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I loved it. Honestly, it was everything I wanted and more. Like, I definitely feel like if I went back now, I'd be more prepared, more of an understanding of the game. I think having that understanding of what could come, how to play certain situations is invaluable. So I think if I was to go back now, I'd be in a much stronger position to do well. But I loved every minute of being in there. It's a real shame I got sick. But I definitely train the brain a little bit more. And I would love to come back and do it again. Yeah, 100%.
That's very cool.
Yeah, if you got the opportunity between the two going back in, would you rather do a UK series 2 or go on like season 39 of the flagship show?
I'd love to do the flagship show personally.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where the foundation of the challenge is from. Like, I'd love to do the biggest, baddest run with the legends again. Like, I want to push myself. The UK one was great. Had an amazing time, but yeah, I'd love to. It was also amazing to like meet all the US players as well and like interact with them. It's a whole different world. I've met people in that series that I never would have met in my life. I've got people from all over the world coming together, and I'd love to do it again and test myself in that capacity. Definitely.
How much on your guard were you when you met those US players initially? Because remember we talked to Troy a little bit ago, and he was saying that they would play Mafia and games like that. And my thought process would be, I would be the worst Mafia player ever when I'm playing with these guys. I'm not giving them any clues on to what I'm thinking. Is that what you were thinking when you came in?
How good at lying people are. Yeah, I was like, okay, I see you now. Yeah, I mean, you've almost got to like tread the line between getting to know people, but knowing that you can shoot yourself in the foot if you give away too much of your personality. So there was that constant kind of withhold a little bit of you and what you're about, but also you're in an environment with people for such a long time. And you want to get to know people and you want to enjoy yourself. And, you'll have a few drinks every now and then as, we go out to the bars and all that kind of stuff. And there is a lot of fun to be had there, but there is always that competition element hanging over you. And so you've got to be, and that is one of the most important things about the challenge, I think, is you've got to constantly be on your game. Like, there's no second off. When you're asleep, fine, you can relax. But as soon as you wake up, people are judging you, people are assessing you, people are getting to know you, your strengths, your weaknesses. There's always conversations being had about you. So I think we almost got to kind of understand that and just roll with it.
I know a lot of other cast members have said when they get back from a season that it takes them a little bit to get out of game mode. Like they'll
Yeah.
come back home and they'll think their spouse is plotting something against them because that's just what they're used to for the past couple weeks. Did you feel that coming back from the show? Or were you able to divorce things pretty easily?
I definitely felt like I had to readjust to normality because I'd done the UK one and then the very small time in between, and then straight into the South African World Championship. So yeah, it definitely took a while to like adjust and to have a bit more faith and to not. Do you know what the strangest thing was to not have my lights turned on in the morning and not have a camera in my face for every second of the day. My mic.
They turn on the lights for you guys?
Can I speak freely? Yeah, the lights come up automatically.
It's like you're in
All
jail.
time of day. Yeah,
I know.
literally.
You don't
And
have full control of
I'm
the
the
light
kind of
switch.
person who's very like I like my own space. I'm an outdoors kind of guy. Like, that's very important for me. So one of the hardest things for me was to be in that kind of crazy socializing environment for so long and to not be able to like breathe and have like a moment to yourself because you don't have any time to yourself. Like if there's not a camera in your face, you're mic'd up. There's mics in the ceiling. There's mics built into cameras built into the ceiling as well. So you're 24 hours in it. And so yeah, that was a strange thing to get my head around when I got back to the UK. Still feel like
What
I'm being filmed.
are you like interacting with the production people in the house, really, or not at all? Because that to me, that's the craziest part of the house. Just there's people with just cameras walking around. You're not allowed to like talk to them.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, kind of when you're traveling to and from, the challenges stuff. I think you have a chat with them, but I think production, kind of as a standpoint, they stay quite hands off. I think that's something that they want to do to kind of encourage the game to flow naturally, and they don't step in really. Only after we all finished can we get to know production. But I mean, amazing team, like such a cool team. And obviously in the interviews, you get to know the producers there. But yeah, they definitely stay a bit more hands off.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate you taking the time to be able to, I guess, let us learn more about the season. Is there anything that you wanted to promote? Anything that you wanted to, I guess, make sure that we didn't ask you that you want to talk about? Again, we really appreciate you coming on.
I think that's pretty good for me, guys. Just I want to have this interview again after I win the flagship show.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do.
Well, we will make sure to have you on. Yeah.
100%. No, it's been a pleasure, guys. Great to talk about the challenge. An amazing show, and like I understand why everyone loves it. Like it's been a really cool thing to be involved with. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful for chatting to you guys.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Tristan, and we'll talk to everyone soon. Bye.